resources from our nature and from our surroundings. So the general tendency should be to give back and provide for our surroundings, our environment, and on those lines. So definitely, if it is been imposed as a mandatory thing on companies, it would be a sustainable. It has to be a sustainable way out. Whereas this thought process need to be penetrated down the line, maybe in mid-sized firms or small-sized firms.
Yeah, so I'll add on to it to determine this in a better way. We first need to understand what ESG actually is when it comes to a company. So if we talk about E, that is environment, we'll be considering it's a company's impact on the environment. S, that is social, we'll be talking of the social impact on its people, its employees, and the company. And G stands for the governance of the company, that talks of the leadership and all these people. So for us to reach a conclusion as to whether it is a fad or whether it is required, we would first need to elaborate on these also.
I completely
So
agree
adding,
with the candidate and would like to mention three important points that we can focus on. Since we're talking about ESG, I would bring the topic of corporate social responsibility. It's just the 2% profit that companies are forced to make out of this division, whereas I believe that it has the potential to make a huge impact. So the three things that we should focus is on the revolutionizing the CSR division, some new initiatives in that. Second will be some kind of active ownership in this sector. And third will be decarbonization, which companies can focus so that they have a long term investment in the same.
so adding to these points, I also want to add one more point. We are in an era when the profit is not the single parameter where company is judged by the investors only. There are other parameters like values or the ethics in which the company are focusing right now. And there are certain regulatory pushes as well from the governments that can help the industry to focus more on the ESG side.
I also think, to add on to what Kuldeep said, that ESG is a sustainable trend, because seeing how the environment is going, as per the Paris Convention, we are supposed to limit our temperature to 1.5 degrees to the industrial levels. But as far as the trend is going, we are already 2.5 degrees Celsius above the required, the desired temperature. To keep that in mind, I think companies, especially big conglomerates, have a huge task in hand, because what are profits worth if they are not human living on the planet? So to sustain not just companies but life on Earth as well, we have to invest. Not just invest, we have to dedicate a big chunk of it so that we can sustain not just the company but on planet Earth as well.
Yes,
Adding on to
I
that,
also
I agree with his point, my fellow members' point, that the companies, big conglomerates today are having a large impact on the environment and social areas as well. So, to compensate what they have taken from the environment, they should give back to the environment and invest in other areas rather than just distributing its profits among the investors. So I believe it's a sustainable trend which will go on further and will help our future generations.
So
yes,
just
I
to
agree.
I also
just to make it
I
yeah,
I,
go ahead.
I agree.
okay. I also
Okay,
Go
fine. Please go ahead.
okay. I also agree with what they said. ESG is the need of the hour. We need to invest in companies that are more focused on environmental, social, and governmental things. I believe it is a sustainable thing to do, and it is the need of the hour, as due to the factors that environmental is being degraded nowadays. So it is really responsibility of everyone, and even the companies, to focus more on environmental and social impact.
So just to make it clear, this is not
Point.
As
just to make it clear, ESG is not a government mandated uh, avenue. This is basically private investors that are demanding ESG norms from private companies. So it is much easier for larger, just like regulations, it is much easier for larger corporations to follow these ESG norms, which basically pushes down and burdens the lower and the smaller firms, and it reduces their profitabilities, and this basically consolidates even the largest firms in these fields because they are the ones that are getting investments. The
I
companies are not able to meet these norms, so we should be skeptical of what ESG work, but how ESG works. Like companies like BlackRock and Vanguard and the major investment banks may use this to control their own interests. So this needs to be ESG needs to be better clarified and ratified by the governments for it to be more fair to every company.
I agree
Adding to
on
the
those
point of
points.
uh,
I
adding
agree
to
on
the
those
point,
points because
yeah, go
see,
ahead.
we have to understand if you're just talking of ESG as as something that is enforced by the government, it is not true as of now. However, in today's scenario wherein companies or large giants are talking of carbon footprints, their carbon footprints on the company, on the earth, and how they're tackling it. So those are things which companies are also wanting to do it, not just for their profitability. Yes, their investment goes up into it. However, in the longer term, they're being more responsible towards the society as well as the earth because they're using the resources eventually. So it is also being aligned with the goals of national interest and of global interest when it comes to global warming and such factors. So that also
I
needs to be considered.
Adding to
would
these
like to add
points, I
on the
want to
points.
introduce one major threat which is there. The developed countries who got industrialized first and has the first mover advantages promise to give the developing countries a major chunk of their economy to fight against the environmental issues. But now they are back. They are not fulfilling their promises, and yeah, now they are not fulfilling the promises. And as the Donald Trump is taking the power in USA, he is going to take major decisions against it, and he is not going to give amount to the developing countries for it. So it's a
Yeah,
threat
when
for ESG.
yes, I agree. I agree. And when we are talking about promises, I think we should also mention something regarding the trends, like the sustainable trends that are going on. So, as my fellow candidates have mentioned, that there are a few trends with companies like BlackRock. I'll also mention a few examples like Unilever. So, Unilever is already has a good sustainability living plan, which it had introduced for its own employees, and I think it has set a high level of a line which other companies also needs to follow in terms of investment. So I think when we talk about investment, examples like ITC, Bell Melinda Foundation, these are a few examples which have already invested in ESG with the thought to take the division into its fullest potential. When I talk about my experience at HCL, when I was there at the HCL campus, which is the SEZ zone, I observed that the campus was a green campus. There were a lot of things that were done to make sure that the headquarters remains as a green campus. So I think these are some steps that companies are already taking in this front, and bringing the trend to a level where this industry can reach its fullest
So we
potential.
have talked a lot
Uh,
about ESG, which
Yeah.
is the environmental part of ESG. We have
yes,
not
yes.
touched upon the social and governance aspect of it. So social means uplifting backward communities and communities that are disadvantaged, and governance means an improvement in the government and oversight structure. It includes independent board members. It includes oversight committees. It includes how the company is run so that it can be sustainable in the long term, and malpractices and promoter interests can be balanced out with employee and rest other stakeholders' interests.
So
So
just
I
Yes, I
I'd like
agree
to
with my
bring in
friend
a
here.
point.
Yeah, I agree with my friend here that ESG, apart from environmental investing, it is also a social. We have also have to look at the social point of view, along with companies focusing on reducing their carbon footprint from environmental point of view. Companies that focus on fair labor practices need also we need also to look at those companies to for investors to invest more in them. And apart from that, uplifting backward communities, as my friend pointed out, is another important point that companies need to focus on in the companies if we want to invest in them.
just
Adding
to
to the
circle
point to
back to
I'd
the
like to.
adding to the point to my fellow colleague, in the government of India is also taking in initiatives to provide a green credits to the companies who are taking the land from the government. The government is trying to replenish the plants around the industry so that the
as so the sustainability as well as the growth uh, goes hands in hand, and the green credit will give the incentives to the company to build more industries, and at the same time the government is also taking care of the replenishing the earth.
Just
These
to
are some
circle
good points
back
which
to
we have
I'd
the
like
discussed
to
in
add
terms
upon a
of
point.
environment. We've already discussed a few good points regarding our environmental impact. So when it comes to social impact, I believe that it is not just our impact, our company's impact onto the society. However, it is also taking care of their employees, the labor laws which should be fair, their policies which should be made in such a way that there's fair practices, employees are not mistreated, or there's no malpractices happening. Those are also integral parts because that will ensure that there is certain amount of standardization, there's certain amount of living standards which is pushed through to their employees, and it will also ensure that there's transparency between the relationship of the suppliers and all the supply chain management components in a particular organization. So that will also ensure equity over there.
just to
Yeah.
circle back to the
I'd like
environment
to add
part
a
of
critic
it.
point.
If you don't mind, Akshat, may I go? If that's
Yes,
okay.
please go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. So just to circle back to the environment for one set of discussion being that we discussed that it is one of the major factor of them being investing or them being socially aware is because of the shareholders concern, or basically us investing might have a look on that part of a company. If it was not for the shareholders, would a company go an extra mile and maybe if we talk 10 years down the line, if the investors inclination toward a ESG sort of a goal would reduce down, so would we still have a ESG inclination of a company towards such goals, or would it fade away? So I would like we could just discuss a bit on these lines also.
I think we can also answer your question regarding on the lines that you mentioned shareholders point, right? So I think we can also think about the same and focus more on the trends that are upcoming in companies who are already working in this sector for a very long time, because it's not easy to sustain in this business when we're talking about ESG or CSR divisions, because these divisions require your organization to work in a long-term investment direction. So I believe if companies really want to make a monetary profit of just that 2%, they might focus it on for a very short period of time. And to answer your question, I believe that even shareholders would only put that kind of faith in the people of this division in a company if they're thinking about a long-term investment. And if we talk about the other 2 points, which is social and governance, we can also think on the line of ethics. And say, for example, if we take an example of United Nations, we all know that how ethics are balanced out in that, in that organization. So I believe when we are talking about social and governance, we can focus more on aspects like ethics and employee governance.
So social.
I
Going
totally
on the
believe that
going
point as well. We have discussed enough about the environmental aspects of this ESG. Now we should focus on social and governance as well. And coming to back to the point of ethics, it's really important in these times to focus on ethics. And most importantly, companies these days should first focus on their employees and their labor laws. Um, we all must have heard the news is that companies are paying a lower amount than what is the standard set for their laborers. So to uplift the backward classes first, I believe companies should first focus on their employees and improve their standards, their working conditions, and then we'll focus on giving back to the community more.
And not
Yes,
just
sir, I
adding to
agree
the
with
point
that.
of
Yes.
inclusivity of employees, I would like to add one point to this table. To inclusivity of all genders are there. There should be inclusivity of LGBTQ in the industry as well, because it's also a part of social responsibility to take care of all the genders apart from male or female genders.
so
Yes, friends, I would also
coming
like
to
to
the
point
governance
out that,
aspect of
okay,
coming to the governance aspect of
go for
ESG. So we have talked about environmental and social. So governance aspects includes the leadership and independent directors, and it includes oversight committees. So basically, these aspects of the governance aspect, especially of ESG, is there to ensure that the company is long term and sustainable. We have seen examples of mismanagement and misgovernance during the dot-com bubble, We have seen, and one of the biggest companies in the world, Enron. We have seen the 2008 financial crisis, all these mismanagement from the top, absence of proper checks and balances in companies, prompted that governance should be a strong component of the ESG score of any company. So we should talk more about why governance, what problems governance can produce. And I believe that governance especially will make the companies themselves much more sustainable than the other two aspects, uh, which are for the community, that the stakeholders that the company operates in.
So
Yes,
I
I
agree
would
with
like
my
to
friend.
extend. Yes, I would like
Go
to
ahead, go ahead,
extend
go
on
ahead.
the point of governance of my friend. Like governance includes how transparently a company operates. Do the employees know what is going on at the higher level in the company? What is happening? I need you all to. We people should also discuss on this point how transparently a company operates, and it is also a very important part of the ESG.
Sure. So I would like to say that governance, no doubt, is a very important part. It's not just companies that is important for. We have seen how Bangladesh has collapsed during an uplift, an uproar of student protest. So governance, no doubt, is a very important role that we tend to forget. The leadership qualities of a company is how we know the company will proceed and go in the next 10 years. If the leadership of a company is taken care of, the ESG part, most of it is taken care of, because people invest not only in a company, they also invest in the leaders. So if the leaders in the governance is proceeding in the right path, we for sure can say that company is going to proceed in the right path in the future.
Yeah, so
I
I'd like
also
to
believe that talking about governance, we should take in that the company should be held accountable for their actions, and this should be more open to the public, that what are their intentions and what are they doing, and should add to the community as well. And their action should say that they are working towards and being held accountable.
Fair enough. So I'd like to sum up our discussion for now. So
Uh,
basically, ESG as of
before
now
submit,
is not.
before concluding, I just want to add one point in the governance itself. Governance not only comes from upward to downward, it also goes from downwards to upward. So it's the responsibility of every employee to be the transparent, as like we tends to make the transparency from upwards. We also have to make responsible the employee sides of the
I
industry.
agree.
So
Just
So
adding
fair
to one
notice of the
another
of
time
point
that we
ESG
have.
before
scores,
we conclude.
to the
I would
overall
like to
concept of
some.
just one point before we sum up.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
overall concept of ESG that we see has some criticisms that have come that it has come under. So a lot of companies like Nestle, Amazon, and Meta, they have very high ESG scores due to since it has become a measure that is targeted based on some spending and other metrics. But these companies have clearly had ESG violations, but their ESG scores are still high. So we need to take ESG not as just a measure that can be hit by spending a particular amount of money or filling some particular quotas. But I would say in the long term that ESG scores and ESG investment aspects can be improved. It is definitely going to be sustainable for business in the
Okay,
long term.
I
Adding to
agree
the
with you.
ESG
In the
scores,
interest of
just
time,
one last point.
no,
Adding to the
I'll
ESG
request
scores,
in the interest of time, we'd like to sum it up right now. So basically, ESG right now is not a criteria for measuring the success of a company. However, based on its impact, it will soon become a criteria. And it stands important because it will show its sustainability and long-term growth. It will also help us ensure transparency and accountability in terms of all its stakeholders, be it suppliers, employees, or the management of the team. And it will also ensure that there are no unfair practices that are being followed or any unethical practices that are being followed. So at the end of it, I believe that it will not just be a fad, but it will also become something that is necessary to grow in the future. Thank you.
Also adding to some of the points that are being missed by in the conclusion that we have also discussed during our talk, I believe were focused more on the environmental sector, like there is increase in temperature going on, so companies should more focus on giving back to the environment. That is one point, and it's sure a part that will take us on the that is sustainable in the future. So I believe at the end of this discussion, most of the points that are put forth there are towards that ESG is definitely a sustainable trend. Thank you.
All right, thank you everybody. A good discussion. Thank you so much for participating and making it a success. How many of you actually did know about ESG before this? Okay, some of you did know about it. How many of you did not know about it? No clues at all. Okay, that was also obvious in the entire thing. Okay, however, some of you pulled out really nicely. For example, Kuldeep did well, although he seemed very clueless to begin with. Let me quickly share a few pointers. Shrija, you did very well, in the discussion today. Okay, your points were very precise, and especially bringing out individual examples like HCL and how the organization is doing it. It's very, very good. Also, you talked about CSR and decarbonization. I think these are very important pointers, primarily to begin with when we are talking about E, which is the environmental part of ESG. Some people who really did well stood out. Devrat, good conclusion in the end. Summarized most of the key pointers, and I believe was a good conclusion. Also, Ayushman, started off well, good intro, some really good examples, talking about and especially diverting the entire group towards social and governance part, while everybody was only discussing environmental. That was a very good point in terms of coordinating, the discussion in the right direction. So that was a good point. I believe that Sahajpreet also did well to begin with. However, after a point, you seemed to, fade out of the discussion and, could not contribute or could not build upon it. So I think that is something which is to be worked upon from that standpoint. I would also believe, for all of you to be a little more, I'd say, to smile a little is okay. You all seem too serious. For example, Shrija has added some good points, but she seems कि अरे अभी मार डालूंगी, ठीक है, ऐसा कैसे बोल दिया, ठीक है. So थोड़ा सा be a little comfortable. You not need to actually look serious. You can be sincere, but to look very serious is not something which is recommended. Beyond that, I believe Swayam, we would need to work in terms of articulation, correct? So, for example, let's say if I get an opportunity, I should not repeat my sentences again. So if I am, saying something, I can build upon it rather than repeating on it. Okay. So participate in the other the other GDs also, and practice. I think practice is something which is important, which is going to help you. So for people like Swayam, you need to work on both content and communication. Tanvi, you would need to work on content. Most of your pointers were actually effectively summaries of what other people have been saying and no individual pointers as such. Okay, right? That is one important element. I was also looking forward to some more realistic. देखो ESG तो बता दिया सब लोगों ने, अब तो अपना दिमाग लगाओ, करेक्ट. सब कुछ तो यू कांट नो एवरीथिंग, बट अगर किसी ने ESG बता दिया कि भाई गवर्नेंस इज एन इम्पॉर्टेंट एंगल, तो यू कैन टॉक अबाउट सत्यम कंप्यूटर्स. हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू नो व्हाट हैपेंड एट सत्यम कंप्यूटर्स? You also know ILFS issue. ILFS, NBFCs and the liquidity crunch which happened in 2018 is a great example. ILFS defaulted approximately 95,000 crore का loan था and defaulted on it. So there are a lot of governance issues if you actually think about it, और बहुत ही clear और simple examples है. Can you give me more examples of governance issues in the Indian context?
So, Byju's.
PNB Bank.
Byju's is a very good example of governance issue. और ये बहुत simple, out in the open. All you have to use is common sense. ऐसा नहीं कि बहुत difficult topic है.
So, if I can say Sahara.
Zara, which incident?
Sahara.
Yes, absolutely. Sahara, you can certainly talk about it. So
The premise of the company was a scam already, so.
And sir, the SpiceJet wala part.
SpiceJet also to a level. So point is, Kingfisher is a great example. Like if you actually, so if you actually think about it, these are absolutely out in the open. आपको अगर कंटेंट नहीं पता है तो भी आप इसके बारे में बात कर सकते हो. Correct? Rather than saying कि yes, I agree with him, yes, I agree with her, उससे better talk about examples, no? ऐसा नहीं बहुत डिफिकल्ट है. तो टॉपिक टू बिगिन विथ मे हैव बीन डिफिकल्ट फॉर अ फ्यू ऑफ यू, प्राइमरली पीपल हु हैव नॉट बीन इनटू वर्क एक्सपीरियंस. हो सकता है दे आर टेकन अ बैक कि अरे ये क्या हो गया अचानक से, बट देर आर एग्जाम्पल्स दैट यू कैन बिल्ड अप. Okay. Again, can you think of some elements in terms of social? अब जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल श्रीजा टॉक्ड अबाउट CSR, तो CSR में भी थोड़ा बिल्डअप कर सकते हो. CSR के क्या रूल्स हैं, कितनी स्पेंडिंग होती है, कौन सी कंपनी, एनीबडी नोज द इंडियन कंपनीज, forget about the foreign companies, Indian companies which are really doing well in terms of CSR. Anybody
Tata,
will guess.
Tata Group.
ITC is doing
The
well.
point, the point. इतना सिंपल है भाई.
Tata is also doing well.
So if you start thinking, तुम्हारा पॉइंट्स वहीं से निकल के आएगा. ठीक है कि टाटा ग्रुप इज बिग ऑन CSR. ठीक है, टाटा ग्रुप इज डूइंग सो मच ऑन CSR. करेक्ट. तो गिव एग्जांपल्स. कोई इंसान अगर कोई अच्छा पॉइंटर लेके आ रहा है तो उसको बिल्ड करो और अर्न ब्राउनी पॉइंट्स फॉर योरसेल्फ. तुमने तो वो पॉइंट बनाया नहीं है, वो पॉइंट किसी और का बनाया हुआ है, पर तुझे भी पॉइंट्स मिलेंगे अगर तुम बिल्डअप कर सकते हो, तुम एग्जाम्पल्स दे सकते हो. Right? So Tata is an example, Aditya Birla is an example, Reliance is an example. Correct? So all these companies, in fact, are investing big in terms of CSR. Can you tell me some activities that maybe your organizations would also be doing in CSR? तुम्हारा अपना organization अगर तुम WorkX में हो क्या करता है CSR के लिए? Do you know? So study about it. Know a little bit more. Correct. In terms of environment, very happy to see Kuldeep bring in that point of the entire climate financing or climate funding that we talked about in the current affairs session yesterday. Okay, that's a a fair point. So whatever you are studying along the way, try to bring that knowledge into discussions and be a little more open in terms of thinking during the discussion also. Correct. So I think these are some of the key pointers which I talk about. I believe it was a good discussion. Kuldeep, also a good point on LGBTQ, which was a very nice point. Yeah. So I think broadly, this is how it looks like. If I have to talk about top 4 people who did well in this discussion, I would say Shrija, I would say Ayushman, Devrat, and Kuldeep. Primarily, your marking is going to happen on 3-4 important elements. One is communication. Okay, and by communication, I mean effective communication, the ability to put your points across in a crisp manner, right? So that is one. Then the second point which is going to be is content. Third point is going to be coordination. Okay, somebody was again, in this discussion also, talking about my friend has said, मेरे काबिल दोस्त ने यहाँ पर जैसे कहा है, ठीक है, that is not something which is allowed in a GD. Okay, you can call them a panelist, a fellow panelist. Okay, so do not call them a friend. Okay, so communication, content, coordination. Beyond that, your overall, I would say, grooming and etiquettes. Okay, so I think these are the 4 parameters basis which I have also done the marking for today, in the entire discussion. But I think good work. I believe you've all done a fair work in the discussion. If you have any questions, be happy to answer that.
I'd just like to add a point, sir. I started with the first GD also. I've seen that, and to this GD, there's a lot of difference in terms of trying to get an entry into the conversation. That challenge is already visible.
Yes, and it will further be visible, Devrat. Devrat,
Yes, sir.
one last point. Who did you stop, while you were concluding? There was somebody who stopped,
Me.
you
Srija.
stopped
Me.
absolutely ruthlessly.
Yeah.
You both lose points there.
Yeah. It's
You
not
both
good.
lose points. Srija loses points for no time sense because it had to be concluded. And you also lose points for very ruthlessly cutting her and then, concluding it.
Sir, how should I approach in such a
You
scenario when
should be
we've
very
already reached
polite. Even if
43?
you're doing it, should be very polite. Should be very polite. You can't ruthlessly cut, somebody, especially a female talking in a conversation, cut her really puts you into a bad light.
Yes, sir.
Somebody who's a feminist will reject you for that.
Point to your wristwatch like this.
So the point is, and Srija, you will also lose points because it was to be closed. Correct. Tanvi, one more point. When you say that somebody has, something has been left out, in the conclusion, and you do not add value, then you lose points. And if in case somebody has concluded and then somebody else is concluding, and if that is a better conclusion or it actually adds some relevant points, then the person who has concluded will lose points. Okay. So be careful. You do not have to actually, talk 3 times or 4 times. You have to remember that you're adding value to the discussion. That's very
There's
important.
one big thing. Let's say if
Yes, sir.
someone is talking way too long,
Okay.
how do we that's basically taking everyone.
Happened in one of the mock PIs with me. I
Yeah.
met a candidate I'll not name. The person talked about, tell me about yourself for 10 minutes. And I was just listening to him. कि हाँ तू बोल ले पहले. उसके बाद मैं अगला क्वेश्चन 10 मिनट में मुझे लगा मैं सो जाऊंगा. ठीक है, 10 मिनट तक लगा था. सो इफ देर इज समबडी हु इज टॉकिंग, what you can do is you can wait, Ayushman. Okay, there is nothing that you can do about it. However, what you can do is once you come, for example, into the discussion, or basically you can also, request that person to summarize or cut in, cut in the points short so that everybody else can have a conversation.
So could you help me understand how I could have, closed the conversation a little
You could
bit
have,
better,
see,
because
you
I
could,
tried.
you could still have Devrat given the opportunity to Shrija to conclude that pointer.
Okay.
Okay. The panel has already seen your your thought process in terms of the idea of conclusion, and you've already started concluding. So if it is because of somebody that you are not effectively getting the opportunity to conclude, then that person loses. Let's say दोनों के 2-2 points कटने से अच्छा है कि उसी का 4 कट जाए.
Fine, sir. Fair enough.
Correct.
Thank you.
So that's the point, I would say. Okay. So what you can
Sir,
also do
and
is you can request very
like point
politely.
out,
Yes, go ahead.
sir, if somebody is concluding, like Dev was concluding, and I wanted to add a point that was, I think, from Ayushman, I wanted to build on that a little bit more. It was related to carbon auditing because I have seen a firm called Earthwood, so I wanted to give that example. So yes, so I was adding to that point because, as you mentioned, carbon auditing is something which is very important when we talk about ESG, and so that's why I wanted to build on that. But yes, it was I saw the time and I realized that it's time that we conclude. So how would I have managed, what would I have said so that I don't lose my points, but it doesn't look bad on both the ends?
So in that case, what you can do is you can let Devrat conclude and say that, if the panel allows, I would just add one more point, which is valuable to the discussion. However, I could not think of it during the discussion. Okay. And then you can add that.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I knew something about this topic, so I think
No,
it's a
it's fine.
leverage over, but
It is certainly a leverage, but only when it comes in the time allotted to you.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people probably lost points when I pivoted the
Yeah,
discussion to social and governance. Like, you might be thinking a lot about environmental. So sometimes
absolutely,
you don't get your points through, and that's
absolutely. And that happens all the time, Rija.
yeah.
Whenever you have a discussion, you would lose out some points. Okay. So I think initially the first couple of minutes, note down all the key points that you might talk about, and then build upon those points during the discussion, and also pick up cues from others and build upon them. Right. So I think that's where we conclude. Any other questions?
Yeah, sir, I had a
Sir, I
question
want
if
to
you
ask
could
one thing.
tell me of things I could improve on.
So Tanmay, I think you talked about primarily you were also effectively taking points from others and building upon it. For primarily people who were not in top 4, the pointers that I have given is effectively common to everybody. Okay, and therefore I'm not, nitpicking on everybody. Build
Okay.
up more examples. If you do not know a topic, well enough, build upon examples लाओ. ESG
Okay.
के अंदर गवर्नेंस के एग्जांपल्स लेके आओ कि बैड गवर्नेंस होता है तो क्या होता है, and therefore you're emphasizing कि governance अच्छी होनी चाहिए. So there should be additional focus, additional investing into ESG, because governance is a very important thing.
So, sir, I did bring in an example of Bangladesh. Like I was saying that it's not just not a company. We are talking about a country here, and that collapsed because of bad governance. So
Bangladesh has not collapsed completely.
I mean, so it is a total government collapse. I think governance was a collapse हो गया है.
So governance collapse कर गया तो क्यों collapse कर गया?
That is because of bad leadership, because of policies that were not appreciated by the public. So that is bad governance. So basically, to
But
say,
again, Tanmay, so basically the point here is that if I am talking about leadership, that is one point which I have noted for you. However, that is, only one element. We need to
right,
effectively, keep coming back with good examples, right? Just
okay,
for example, Shreya talked about CSR, decarbonization, talked about ethics, talked about, specific examples in case of HCL. तो ऐसा हम एक पॉइंट डाल के हम नहीं सोचते कि आप मेरा हो गया,
okay,
मेरा सिलेक्शन एक पॉइंट पे, वैसे नहीं होगा. यू हैव टू कीप कमिंग बैक. दो तीन अच्छे पॉइंटर्स आपको करने पड़ेंगे. ओनली देन कैन यू कंसिडर योरसेल्फ इन अ टॉप, in a GD, but people moving into the next rounds.
okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, how do you think we all handled like shouting over each other for points? Like how did you handle that?
So I believe that there were a few occasions where many people were talking at the same time. However, we did better. We did well, and I think we can further improve on it. Right? Primarily, such an avenue is going to be presented to you in a few occasions going forward as well, where not a lot of people have a clue about the topic, and the best time is the first 5 minutes in that discussion. And after 5 minutes you lose the leverage because now everybody knows. Correct? So first 5 minutes you should utilize, and then be polite, add in a point, try and make like 2-3 entries. Okay, in a 20 minutes discussion, I believe 3 entries is something which you can do. And quick entries, quick entry, quick exit, like 30-40 seconds entry, and powerful entries and very impactful. So Ayushman, you did good entries, correct? Very powerful entries, and very assertive, correct? So that is something which I did really like about your participation in the GD.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Kuldeep, go ahead.
So I want to ask, जैसे मेरे को इस टॉपिक के बारे में कुछ भी नहीं पता था, तो आई गेट अ सेटबैक कि ये क्या चल रहा है. आफ्टर 2 to 3 4 minutes मेरे को रियलाइज हुआ कि हाँ, व्हाट्स गोइंग ऑन. So giving an example where I am working or in the niche industry I am working, is it fine?
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
I work in a construction industry, and most of the people don't know about the companies in the construction industry, apart from L&T and Fcons,
Okay.
which is again a major player.
No, it's okay, but you can give examples from your sector, in terms
Yes,
of, the environmental impact, or, the
yes.
social issues, or the governmental issues, right?
Yeah,
So
basically there are many social issues in the construction industry which is like छुपे
there
हुए
are
हैं जो कि अभी,
there
so
in
we can talk
there are a
about
lot
it.
of there are a lot of governance issues also. So you can certainly talk about it. There is nothing
Yeah,
wrong with it.
governance.
That's the right thing to do. Correct? So see, when you do not know about something at a macro level, think about it at the micro level. Okay, that's how you can build points. Okay, for example, let's say you do not know how the Indian economy is doing, but you can still see how the prices are inflated in your vicinity, right? You can still talk about
Yeah.
something. Correct? Something is better than nothing. And I would say, bring in a little more, examples, some facts, okay, rather than saying I agree to this person, I agree with this person, I agree with that person. That effectively does not add any value, right?
And sir, one more thing. I was reading and you pointed out कि बाद में पढ़ लेना.
I know
So
that.
वो दिख रहा था क्या मेरे चश्मे पे?
दिख रहा था.
Okay,
यही तो काम है ऑब्जर्वर का.
right.
Okay. Pradeep, go ahead.
Sir, I tried to enter the discussion 3 times, but someone from the team cut me the 3 times. So I was not able to enter in the situation. So should I raise my voice in that situation to get in,
You
to
should
get an
be
entry?
Pradeep, you should be a little more assertive.
Okay.
Okay, and when you know जब तुझे पता होगा ना कि मेरी बात में दम है ना, तो आवाज में भी दम आ जाएगा। ठीक है, जब बात में दम नहीं होता तो आवाज में भी दम नहीं होता है। समझा प्रदीप? तो पढ़ाई करो। Sarang, go ahead.
Hi, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
So like in one of the previous GDs, like you said, ki if there's given a topic, we should elaborate on that topic in an introductory phase. But suppose ki the topic is unique and no one else knows about it, and I know about the topic very well. So I would be in an advantage ki I'll start a discussion from in between, like direct discussion instead of introducing the topic. But that, like, should we do it or should we introduce the topic briefly if we
No,
know
no.
about
So,
it?
so Sarang, see, if nobody knows about that topic, you should introduce. Otherwise, how will you have a discussion? See, if you're the only one participating, there is nobody participating in your group. Okay. So then it also, to a level, reduces your chances of getting converted. Because, if nobody is contributing, you are only repeating your points. There is not enough discussion. So the point is you should, pass on a little leverage. It's okay. People are noticing that also. The moderators, the coordinators are noticing that you started with a very good introduction. They also knew that this is something which not a lot of people will have an idea of. And therefore, when you elaborate about it, people know that you know something. So which is obviously a good thing to begin with. Correct? So you should do that. Do not, do not do, because अगर तुम भी नहीं इंट्रोड्यूस करेगा, सामने वाले को ऐसा लग सकता है कि इसको भी नहीं आता है।
But
करेक्ट? सो वो डिसएडवांटेज में कन्वर्ट हो जाएगा।
ठीक है, got it, sir.
Yeah, perfect.
And sir,
Sir, I had one more doubt.
Yes,
excuse me.
yes. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Sir,
Yeah. Wait a minute, Srija. Sir, actually, out of this GD, I have one another question. कि जो SOPs हमने भेजे एक्सेल के, उस पे रिस्पॉन्स कब आएगा रिव्यू?
कब भेजा है एक्सेल का?
Like 8 o'clock, 7:38
कब
is
तक आना चाहिए?
that only I don't know.
नहीं, you tell me, no, कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस है भाई ये। सो टेल मी कब तक आना चाहिए तुम्हारे हिसाब से?
Around 11.
11 तक आ जाना चाहिए। और जो तुमसे पहले भेजा है, जो 5 बजे भेजा है, जो 6 बजे भेजा है, जो 4 बजे भेजा है, उसका
उसके पहले
4 बजे के भी पहले। वो 4 बजे भेजा, उसको पास्ट में जाके 11 बजे उसको रिस्पॉन्स आना चाहिए। ऑल द रिस्पॉन्सेस सारंग इज गोइंग टू कम इन बाय टुनाइट बिकॉज वी नो दैट देयर इज अ डेडलाइन।
Yeah.
So by 3 o'clock, we
Oh,
will be awake to do it. Will you be awake to submit it?
yes, sir. अगर आप बोलो तो
मैं क्यों बोलूंगा? मैं जग रहा हूँ बिकॉज ये मेरी फीलिंग है, मेरा डेडिकेशन है। तुम जगो, तुम्हारा अगर है तो
yes, जगेंगे सर, डेफिनेटली.
गुड। ठीक है, चलो। ऑल राइट,
सर
एनीथिंग?
एक्सेल वाले पॉइंट पे आई आल्सो वांट टू
यस।
ask something. मैंने बीएम के क्वेश्चंस पहले फ्रेम कर लिए थे, देन योर वीडियो पॉप्स आउट, तो मैंने देखी तो है, बट वो जो पॉइंटर्स हैं उसमें सर्टेन पॉइंट्स आर मिसिंग, तो वो मैं बाद में ऐड करूं या
कौन से
फिर पहले करके दोबारा मेल कर दूं?
कौन से पॉइंट्स?
द एक्सेल के बीएम में जो आपने एसओपी के लिए बोला था ना सर,
वो बेसिकली तुझे अगर फॉर एग्जांपल लेट्स से लगता है देयर इज समथिंग दैट हैज बीन मिस्ड आउट, तो वो ऐड करके भेज दो, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है।
ओके सर।
ओके, ऑलराइट,
sir, one
यस,
last question
गो अहेड।
from my end. So one thing is that when we are concluding in a GD, like I have observed, अभी तक मैं 1-2 GDs में formally बैठी हूँ, तो I have observed कि everyone concludes and everyone introduces, then only someone gives the pointers, but it might not be the case with every GD, right?
दैट्स करेक्ट।
So जैसे इसमें only 2 people concluded, Devrat and Tanvi, but like what would you suggest कि is it a system कि everyone concludes or only
नो नो, सो
like
श्रीजा,
if we have points?
तो श्रीजा, नॉट even if you conclude, you cannot add a new point. A conclusion should never carry a new point. Okay, that is point number one. Point number two, the format can change a little bit. Okay, so the format is effectively dependent upon the coordinator. The crux of a GD is a good discussion. Okay, so that is effectively what is expected. फॉर्मेट कुछ भी हो सकता है कि पहले सबको इंट्रो करना है, फिर बाद में सबको कंक्लूजन करना है. पहले फॉर एग्जांपल लेट्स से कोई इंट्रो नहीं है, लास्ट में किसी एक इंसान को कंक्लूड करना है, वो भी कोऑर्डिनेटर बताएगा कि कौन करेगा कंक्लूड. करेक्ट. तो कोई भी फॉर्मेट हो सकता है. डू नॉट वेट टिल द लास्ट मोमेंट कि लास्ट एक बहुत अच्छा पॉइंट है वो लास्ट में बोलूंगा, नहीं, आप बोल दो उसको. ठीक है.
Okay,
ओके.
thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. God bless. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir.